My name is Mark Reynolds, and we're going to be doing Psychology in a Film assignment over A Beautiful Mind. The character being analyzed in this study is John Nash, who's played by Russell Crowe. He's a brilliant mathematician, studies at Princeton, greatly contributes to the game theory. The movie takes place, as previously mentioned, beginning in Princeton, in Nash's early adult life, and it continues into the later years of life, where he wins the Nobel Prize. He is married to his wife Alicia, and they have one son together. John Nash is a real person, so the movie's based off a real person who's also suffered from the psychological disorder of schizophrenia. However, as shown in the movie, he pushes through that and ultimately earns a Nobel Prize for his work in game theory. The diagnoses. It is easy to see that John Nash has schizophrenia since it is the main point of the film and is openly shown and discussed throughout the film. There are hallucinations and delusions that we will discuss later in the PowerPoint. The proper DSM-5 category name for this disorder is schizophrenia spectrum and other psychological disorders. Schizophrenia is categorized according to the DSM-5 by an exhibition of at least two of the following symptoms in a 1-month period: delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior, or negative symptoms, which includes emotionally distant, especially towards those who are loved ones. Evidence for diagnosis in the film. So there are two that are most apparent throughout the film, which are Nash's delusions and hallucinations. His delusions are seen in the film mostly beginning when Parcher convinces Nash that he is the best natural codebreaker of his time, that his talents were needed in breaking an unbreakable code. And as you see in the bottom right corner of the slide, there's a picture of Parcher, who also is one of his most prominent hallucinations, along with Charles and Marcy. However, the most prominent of the three is Charles, who was his roommate in his early years in Princeton, who is supposed to be his best friend throughout the film, and is until the discovery when he's entered into the psychiatric ward, discovering that Charles was never even real. It was just a figment of his disorder. The missing symptom in the film, there weren't a lot of examples of disorganized speech throughout the film. There was one or two scenes where you could kind of say that it was that, but you could also say that he was just stumbling over his words as a part of his medication or some other thing like that. So while it is present in the film, it is certainly not the most prominent and is not really touched on throughout the film. As far as treatment goes, treatment was a really big aspect of the film. There are three different types of treatments used, starting with insulin coma therapy, which was believed to eliminate the cause at the time. It's not used anymore because they thought that faulty brain cells were the true cause of schizophrenia, and they thought that insulin coma, which is basically pumping someone with insulin so that they get into a forced coma by eliminating the flow of sugar to the brain and the blood and just the body, and it was supposed to kill the lesser and faulty brain cells, and then the brain would naturally replace them with healthy ones, then curing him of his schizophrenia. The other form of treatment that is shown in the psychiatric ward is electroshock therapy, which at the time was believed to be used to balance any chemical imbalances in the brain. While insulin coma therapy does not have any effect on the improvement of schizophrenia, electroshock therapy has been proven to have a positive effect on treating schizophrenia, even for a brief time. In both cases, there are ethical concerns, but especially for insulin coma therapy, which, as previously mentioned, is just a forced coma, which can be very damaging to the body. Just cutting off glucose and energy to the brain itself is very dangerous, let alone the rest of the body. But electroshock therapy is very similar, especially in the early examples of its treatment, where there were no muscle relaxants or sedatives given. And this caused sometimes pain and just injury over the body through the electric shock therapy, which caused the entire body to seize. However, using these drugs, it has become much safer. The third type of treatment is antipsychotic pharmaceuticals, and is shown in the film as well. These suppress schizophrenic episodes while also suppressing normal brain activity, keeping everything in the brain very, very low activity, which is a big problem for Nash, especially being the brilliant mathematician that he is and the brilliant just scientist and discoverer that he was. Disorders in the film A Beautiful Mind It displays an accurate portrayal of schizophrenia, maybe slightly over dramatized, but overall a good display, creating real pictures of the symptoms, especially in the hallucinations of the delusions. In my opinion, psychology in film shapes how we view psychological disorders in sometimes overdramatic light. It can twist society's view of disorders into something they are not, especially with schizophrenia, which is a highlight of the film industry when it comes to psychological disorders. However, psychological disorders in film make the world aware of the psychological struggles experienced by many people around the world today.